reading all of Eden by FREI live on Facebook and on YouTube, with the recorder clips then making their way onto Instagram, IGTV. We are still in the 10th volume of the Eden Miniatures series. I think it's the 10th. Yes, it's the 10th volume, the Bournemouth and Boscombe Trilogy. And in there, we are still in part 1 of the trilogy. There are 3 parts of being a trilogy. The first part being called Pyromania. And what I'm reading today is the 6th installment of it. I'm still reading it from my screen because I still haven't received my new paperback copy. You may remember, if you listened last time, that I gave away the only paperback copy I had to somebody who wanted it, a reader whom I met on my travels, who is from Bournemouth and Boscombe. I think she's from Bournemouth, actually. And so today I'm going to read from my screen one more time. This is still Pyromania, and within Pyromania, it's the 6th installment. The display on the night was magnificent. The dreadful beauty of destruction. Summer solstice in Bournemouth and Boscombe would never be the same again. Some people, idiotically, referred to it later as the Midsummer Massacre. It was, of course, nothing of the sort. Nothing of the sort. But it was violent, catastrophic, and exceptionally elegant too. The people in Totland on the Isle of Wight probably had the best view, apart perhaps from some revellers who had gone down to the Needles and stayed there till sunrise. George and Andy never gave a name to what they did, and by no stretch of the imagination could it truthfully be described as a massacre, either by intention or by effect. Did it therefore, somewhat clumsily and by the uncomfortable default that envelops events which happen too quickly and then linger, became known as the solstice spectacle, is largely attributable to a couple of unassuming and in most senses of the word pretty average men in their 30s, Stefano and Paul, one Italian, the other English, who had decided to spend the afternoon on Studland Beach and, having previously been oblivious to its naturist stretch, found themselves teased out of their swimwear for the first time in a more or less public place by sheer opportunity. They had brought along a picnic hamper and 2 bottles of Verdicchio. Stefano had insisted it not be Pinot Grigio for once, and gone through said bottles with unsurprising ease by the time it got dark. After that, they felt comfortably relaxed, but also just a tad horny, and not wanting to risk making a nuisance of themselves or incurring the wrath of other naturists. They withdrew a bit behind some dunes and the long grass, where they no more than lay in each other's arms and maybe fondled each other a bit before, in the unusually warm air of the night, even for a midsummer night on an English beach, they dozed off. They woke up again at what must have been some time after midnight, maybe close to 1, and the alcohol having eased off, but not so much their libido, Stefano remembered that he may just have a tiny bit of M left in his backpack from a session he had been to with a couple of guys a few months earlier, which had been really rather enjoyable. This proved to be the case, and although the little sachet he'd pushed down one of the outside pockets of the backpack at the time on parting and more or less forgotten about contained just enough for maybe twice 2 shortest lines, that was certainly enough to give them a pretty good time for the next couple of hours or so. Stefano was in a blissful place, looking out over the expanse of the sea upside down on the sandy slope towards the beach, with Paul over him and inside him, the 2 of them so into each other, so in sync, so absorbed in their rhythm that nothing else mattered, that everything was good and warm, and I am you and you are me, and the way they were together, they both got to the point where soon, but please not just it, they both would erupt, and they both built up to it, and they moaned and groaned and called each other's names, and oh yeah, and oh God, and Dio mio, and not yet, and I want to come, and me too, and yeah, do it, and just as they did, Stefano, a fraction sooner, which tipped all over the edge too. Just at that moment, the sky and the beach and the sea lit up, and their orgasms lasted and lasted, and their happiness and their joy and their union was complete, and the chain of lights adorned the coast in explosion after explosion, like gorgeous firecrackers in the distance, and blue flashes sparked, and yellow flames danced, and thick smoke rose in the purple, red, orange skies, and both of them lost their minds for minutes and maybe for hours. But for these moments, they were it all, and it all was they, and that was the universe, and the universe was wonderful and one. There were maybe 24 or so other nude people who had elected or ended up spending the night on the beach, and none of them had really been particularly aware of these two. Sure, if those who had settled in closest had kept quiet and still for a while, they would probably have heard, faint in the distance, the unmistakable noises of two people getting high on a recreational substance and on each other. But nobody did, because they had their own conversations. One small group even had their guitars, some had their whispers, and others their quieter unions to celebrate. And so nobody had minded or noted the glorious coming together of Stefano and Paul. But now everybody was on their feet by the water, watching the spectacle unfolding on Bournemouth and Boscombe beaches, all the way from Sandbanks to Christchurch. It was awesome in every original sense of the word, awe-inspiring and profound. Stefano, still high as a kite, and like the others on the beach, largely naked, some perhaps had put on a shirt or wrapped a shawl around their shoulders, was in a heaven all of his own, exclaiming in Italian, "Mamma mia, che bello, Dio mio, che spettacolo, che spettacolo, che spettacolo." And Paul, equally high but less Mediterranean in his expression, kept hugging him and smiling and laughing and smiling and kissing him. And then they just held hands and stood there, naked as the universe had made them, among the others who stood there naked and amazed and awed. And so it came to be that by far the most vivid, most famous, most watched, and most liked, most discussed, also most shared, and most in its own peculiar way cherished video of the most horrific devastation ever unleashed on the English seaside was also, and looked and felt and sounded and would be experienced for decades by people the world over as a fantastic, poetic, ecstatic celebration of humans just as they are when in love. That is it for today. I had forgotten. Normally I rehearse these, and normally I do a trial run, but I ran out of time today, so I didn't. And I should really probably have given a short, maybe not quite entirely in its current form, safe for work warning before reading this, but I didn't. So I apologize if you're listening to this at work, although it's now 6 o'clock London time. So if you are somewhere where you're listening to this and you're finding that actually this has a slightly adult content, then my apologies. I should really have given you a warning of this. But never mind, this is as far as it goes. And this is also as adult as it gets here on Eden by FREI. I hope, therefore, you will join me again when we continue on Wednesday, because I do this twice weekly, on a Monday and on a Wednesday at 6 p.m. London time, which is approximately, I think it is 1 p.m. New York time. So until then, take good care, love and let love, and see you very soon.